Hello and welcome everybody. And today is a completely different type of video for me because I am doing an interview and I'm interviewing Sammy Garrity, who is known as the brand Catalyst. Yay! And we're actually going to talk about my upcoming event, which is called Strategic Authorship, a comprehensive experience IP protection for authors. So, Sammy, your journey as a prolific author is truly awe-inspiring, even if a little mind-boggling. Now, can you share a pivotal moment that shaped your path and made you dive deep even into the world of writing?
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Oh gosh, what a question. How did I dive into it? It was just a complete accident, to be honest. I'd never kind of grown up thinking that I was going to write a book. Um, but there were several trigger points. The first was that I almost had 4 heart attacks in 3.5 months. So I was rushed into hospital, having built a multi-million-pound design agency. I was actually building 5 businesses at the same time up in Leeds in the north of England. And so I was really in flow, but I wasn't doing what my heart was calling me to do. And I didn't know about all this whole kind of, the body is very metaphorical about how it breaks down. I wasn't following a spiritual path back then. It was just work, make money, sleep, work, make money, sleep. So I didn't really have a life. So I was focused on building out my businesses and wasn't so focused on legacy or impact. And so um uh, knowing what I know now, obviously that was killing me. It was killing me focusing on those things. The funny thing was that I was so focused on and so driven by my fear of failure that ultimately that's exactly what I got. And I ended up, my body just said to me, you're done. And so I had to walk away from that business. At the same time as walking away from that business, we were just going through a process of sale for 8.7 million pounds, and I had to just walk away from it. I was cooked. I was burned out, and I thought, this time it's not a heart attack, but the next time I come in here, that the consultant had already said to me, we cannot guarantee that what you're doing to your body is going to be reversible if you keep doing what you're doing. And so I had to change. And so ultimately I just walked away. I just said, I can't do it anymore. So that was one of the catalysts, was being laid up the 4th time in the hospital bed, just surrounded by complete chaos in A&E, and just laying there thinking, what is all of this for? What is all this for? I'm not actually leaving any. If I die right here, right now, I am leaving nothing behind. All the clients I was working with were big clients, but they were the only ones that knew that I existed, because they were the marketing director of the big company. The people of the businesses didn't know who I was. And I thought, well, okay, so I'm making some impact through their business, but I want to make an impact through my business. What am I doing? And I really was questioning myself. If I die right here, right now, what have I left behind? And so all of this was happening back in 2013. And as I laid there just thinking all of this, the process of my mind had already started then to move towards legacy. And well, what would I do? And I've been helping all these other people to create legacies. So out of all the things I've taught other people to do and done for them as an agency, what would I like to do? And this little kind of spark came to me. What about writing a book? And as fast as I had the conversation, the doctor then came in, we had the conversation, and I was out. Not long after that, my grandma died. And I remember my mum not dealing with it very well at all. Like, my mum is clean freak, complete, like almost on the level of OCD, like everything in the house, it has its place, and she's amazing, but like, you don't want to touch the tea towel because it could be on display. And so it's like, mum, what do I dry my hands with, and the house was like not like that. And that's how you know that my mum is not actually coping with stuff. And she's never been like that in her life, but this one time. And I said to my now husband, back then, I said, like, I feel like I need to go be with mum, because I want to make sure she's okay. And so I got on the ferry. They live in France. I got on the ferry to go over to see my mum. And I just had this download as I was sat at the front of the boat looking at the water. I actually took a picture of it back then. And I opened up my laptop and thought, you know what, Grandma, maybe you're the kick up the pants that I need. Maybe I am meant to write a book. Maybe I am meant to share what I know. And in the lead up to that process, I'd been really unsure about what I would do next. I'd walked away from the business. I was just kind of rolling around, not knowing what my purpose was, feeling very deflated, not sure what I would do next. And I thought to myself, well, what if I could help people while I work out what my shizzle is? I could maybe help somebody else by sharing some tools and tips that they can use to grow their business. You know, I've grown all these other businesses to millions of pounds, grown my own businesses to millions of pounds. Maybe I can help someone else to do that, that's just starting out, that's unsure about how to get started on that journey. And so I'd come up with the concept of how to build a brand. And I'd started a Facebook group called How to Build a Brand. And I thought, well, that's going to be the name of the book. And I'd already been kind of testing in my group, what do you want to know about how to build a brand? How can I help with how to build a brand? And somebody asked me to speak at one of their seminars. And so I went into some groups and I said, hey, I've been asked to speak for 2 hours on how to build a brand. You're the dream client audience for that. How do you want me to help you? What questions do you have about building a brand that I can answer during this 2-hour presentation? Because I can also help you as well if I know what your questions are. And I was really overwhelmed by the amount of response and all the people that came back to me asking these questions. And I realized the reason I hadn't started writing the book until then was because I didn't have people to write for. They were just like this every person in the world kind of audience. It didn't have a face. And I'm a very kinesthetic human to human person, so I needed someone to write for. And it was like all of these things all went dink 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 dink. And so there I am on the ferry over to France thinking, okay, well, I know what people want to know and I already know it, so it's not going to be hard. Maybe I should start writing a book. And it just started tumbling out of me. Now the ferry to France is a good chunk of hours, about 8 hours. And so I had the whole time just writing. I ended up writing my first book in about 7 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Wow.
And it all just came together because I had someone to write it for. And I really loved writing the book. It was the first one. We published that. That was, in the end, we published that 2014. And it all just started from there. And since then, I've written 8 of my own books, published 5 of them, just literally published our next one, 1 Year No Fear. We just published that a few days ago. And I've been in several other books, and all of them have been Amazon bestsellers. And it's been a really interesting journey, especially because the last book that I published was about 3 years ago. So when we published this one at the weekend, it was like I was getting on the bike all over again. And I learned some huge lessons this time that I hadn't learned all the other times. So it is a process of learning. Like every single time is different. And this book, contrary to the first book we wrote, this has taken 11 months to birth this one. So where the first one just kind of fell out of me and I got it out, this one, it had very personal meaning to me. And this one, it is going to be a big change for anybody that does read it. Whereas the first one, we were just giving some tools and strategies. Here you go, follow that. This one, it's very much more personal. There's a lot of vulnerability in it. There are a lot of vulnerable shares from people that we've worked with over the years. And this one is a result of surveying over 41,000 entrepreneurs and business owners about where their sticking points are and what's holding them back and what their fears are, what's keeping them awake at night. And we sent the survey out to over 60,000 people and over 41,000 responded, which was phenomenal. Wow. So yeah, this book is the result of research, whereas the first one was the result of experience. And I think that's probably why it also took a long time, because we were diving into the research. We also set it up as a live program 11 months ago, so we've had people that have been going through the process as well, and so we've been pouring all of that into the book. And it's also a series as well. There's actually 13 books as part of this particular one. So the first one we launched a few days ago covers all of the 12 fears that are holding people back, the top fears that again and again and again are kind of like at the top of what's holding people back. So somebody might say, I've got a fear of public speaking, but actually it's not. When you go underneath that, there are 5 fears that are in the book that underpin that. So if you can take the first domino, that will fall onto that one and that one, and it will just fall down to the point that that thing that you called a fear of public speaking, that label, it's gone. You don't have it anymore. So it's really interesting how we've dived into that. And so that was the first book that covers all 12, and then we've got another 12 books. I can't believe I'm hearing myself say that. 12 books that are coming out, with the intention that one a month now comes out for the next 12 months. Each of them has a 30-day challenge to move through each of the fears. So in a year, if somebody goes through that process, they'll be a very different person than the one that they started. Or they'll feel different anyway. They'll be actually be more of themselves. They'll be who they really are, not a different person, but more of who they are and who they were born to be. Yeah. And very much more on purpose. So I think that difference between having someone to write for at the beginning and this book being for everybody that has it, that also might be a reason why it's taken so long, because it was written for so many people and not just that one person. So yeah, so many learnings. And that was really the inspiration for how it's all started. It all starts with one person saying something, and then it triggers and goes, if I can help one person, then there's probably a million people behind that person. So the challenge is writing for the one instead of the million. When you write for a million, it takes so much longer. Yeah. It's interesting, very interesting.
So the link between intellectual property and authorship is fascinating to me, as you know. How do you see trademarks playing a role in protecting the creative works of authors, and what advice would you give to fellow wordsmiths in safeguarding their literary creations?
I think it's a really important thing, because especially if you're a change maker, I didn't think about it too much when we wrote our first book, because I wasn't on purpose. I didn't know where I was going. I was kind of rolling around and just like, okay, I need to put a pin in the map. I can help people, just get it out there. And I regret not protecting the content of that, because what happened was, as soon as that book went out, people started to take the book and then kind of repurpose it as their own as such. And I had people that were coming on our courses, that were going through our training. So we took the book and we started to deliver training days around the book. And we found that people started to kind of copy the content and then be putting it out as their own. And so I guess the real question is, are you creating something that are you Mother Teresa and you just want everyone to have what you know? Or do you want to create a solid legacy that has your name attached to it and has your brand attached to it, like Napoleon Hill? Napoleon Hill has the Napoleon Hill Institute. He's been dead God knows how many years, but because he's branded and because his brand was protected, it means that now people are being certified in that, as opposed to just taking the content. And I think that's where I would definitely go. And I'm going to be talking to you about my stuff, because it's really important. If you're going to create something and you're going to create a message that you do want to leave a legacy on the planet, then you probably want to have your name attached to that. And the challenge is, if you don't do that, somebody else not only copies it, but because they haven't got your experience, your wisdom, they haven't got the years of the hard yards and the blood, sweat and tears that you've learned mastering what you do, they're then going out and sharing it, and they're doing a really bad job of that. Well, of course, now that's connected to your name because they're saying this is where I learned it from. So, you know, you have way more control. And of course, if you're going to start certifying people in your method or your expertise, then you're going to have way more success with it if that is protected than if anybody and everybody can go grab hold of it. So I think that's a really, really important thing. And when you're coming up with things like your title, it's thinking about what is the longevity of that title. So you might come up with something that's really clever. I was actually swimming one day when I was thinking to myself, gosh, so many people are like really in fear right now. There was a lot of people around me at that time who were really like demonstrating fear. There was a lot of stuff that was going on when I first came up with the idea for this as well. You know, the presidential elections, we'd just come through Brexit, that my whole feed on Facebook was just full of fear and lack of control. And I thought, you know, I wonder what it would look like if people, like, for the next year just didn't watch the news. And, you know, we were conscious of what's going on in the world, but we didn't buy into it and get caught up in all of the mistruths of it. And we actually walked by, you know, faith and fact. And so, you know, and the news is like usually none of those. And so I thought, I wonder what would happen if people lived for a year, like just totally on purpose, and they just focused on their impact. And I thought, oh, 1 year, no fear. And it came to me. And then, well, as you know, and it's taken me this long to actually really birth it. But when you've got something that is coming to you like that, you don't want other people to just then go and start using that or trading off the back of that, and maybe even pretending that they're you doing that. You know, and so this isn't just a book, it's a book plus a program. So that's all of our livelihood. You don't want to mess with that kind of thing. So I think it's important that you do think of your book as more than just a book. You think of your book as a book and a program. And let's face it, loads of people, millions of people, me being one of them, buy a book and then you don't read it. And so the most intelligent thing to do is to create the book, but also create a program that goes with it, or do book readings, or do something else, which means that you're then in front of many more people who can get access to your book. So if you're going to drive lots of visibility to it, think about the lifetime of the book. And actually, you want to protect that, because that's your footprint and that is your legacy. So just like when I was laid on that table in the hospital, you know, thinking, wow, like, what is my legacy? The great thing about a book is that it lasts forever. And as soon as you publish it, it is around forever. One of the things that Greg and I have really been getting into our family tree, and we found this picture of, somebody had posted this picture on ancestry.com or whatever it is that we're using, that that shows a picture of my granddad's dad, and none of us in our family had ever seen it. So his side of the family must have posted it somehow. And my mum and I were just sat at the screen, like staring at this picture going, wow, like, doesn't it look, now we know where granddad comes from. You know, it felt like a little piece of the puzzle just went chink, and then another piece of the puzzle went chink. And I thought, wow, like, we're searching for this 80, 90 years after he's been on the planet. Who's going to be searching for me like 100 years from now? Maybe even 200, 300, 500 years from now. What footprint do I want to have left? And if you're not trademarking and protecting your assets, and your book is an asset, your brand is an asset, you are an asset, if you're not protecting those, then what do you really want people to find in 100, 200, 500 years from now? Because they're going to find stuff, because Google's going to make sure they find stuff. And who knows where the internet and AI and all kinds of things are going right now. People are going to find stuff. So what do you want them to do? Do you want them to find the you that published a book and then let the flame go out? Or do you want to be the one that's published a book that really meant business? Like, you meant business and you protected your idea, you protected your thoughts, you protected your experience and your wisdom. Because let's face it, there's never been a you and there'll never be another you. There is only the you that is now. And so when you write that book, there is only the you that is creating the you that is going to be found all those years from now. So it's a good question. Who do you want them to find? Someone that protected themselves and really thought about their brand carefully, or somebody that just kind of did it and then threw it out to the world like I did with my first book and then very much regretted it? So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It certainly does. So my next question is, my upcoming event on November 20th, Strategic Authorship, a comprehensive experience IP protection for authors, is aimed at authors just like yourself. In your opinion, why should any author join it?
Well, I think every author should join it because you're probably likely to know very little about this topic in comparison to the amazing woman sat in front of you right now, who's lived, breathed, eaten, and slept trademarking and intellectual property for lots and lots of years. From having read your biography, Celeste, you've supported over 1,000 people to get a trademark, and probably many more than that. And so you know the ins and outs, you know the intricacies of it. I don't want to dabble with that. I don't want to dabble with that because it is my brand that's on the table. And your reputation is something you can't buy. And when it's gone, you can't get it back easily. And so for me, I don't want to mess with my reputation. And if I'm going to go to the trouble and the effort and the energy of creating a book, then I don't want the last hurdle to do a sloppy job of protecting it. And there's so many ways that you can protect your intellectual property. There's so many ways you can protect assets. How do you do this is really, really important. And I have trademarks some of my other businesses that I built up and I sold. And they were worth so much more because they were protected, because they had a trademark. It's like, it's interesting. I can't remember what the statistics are now, but when we trademarked 2 of our businesses, and just from creating the logo and the website and some of the promotional materials to go with it, I can't remember how much it was worth. It was worth something like 7,000, 8,000, just as an idea to sell to somebody who wanted to do exactly that thing, and they were getting ready and set up with a ready-made business. So it's like 7 or 8,000. This was going back to 2007, so we're going back a bit. It's maybe like worth 10, 15,000 now. As soon as we trademarked it, it went up to £30,000 because it was trademarked and it was protected. Yeah. So that's a huge difference. That's more than double the value of the brand, with it just being set up as a business with a logo and a website and everything ready to go, versus it's now protected. And I found that totally fascinating. It was like, wow, and I can see why, because the amount of time that it also takes for someone like you to do the process for someone like me. I know that people go do it on their own, but then they come unstuck. They might have ticked the wrong box, or they haven't protected themselves in all the categories that they want to be protected in. And someone comes over from America with some different brand that is named the same as yours and that has an identity that's like yours, and all of a sudden, because they've got a trademark that protects them in this country, they're now putting you out of business, and you could be in business 15 years. Yeah. So you have to protect yourself, because if you're not protecting yourself, then what's to stop us in this global world that we live in now? Somebody coming over from a different country who has the trademark for your brand, they stop you trading. You cannot fight against it. And so I think we're in an age now where we should be looking at how we protect our copy, how we protect our content, especially with AI and everything that's coming out now. If you don't protect yourself now, then you're literally opening up all your content to the whole world. You might be fine with that, but I'm not.
I found a really interesting study by the European Union that said that businesses, and this was actually startups that have protected their intellectual property are 1,000% more likely to be funded than those that aren't.
Yeah.
That's massive.
Well, you see it on, we watch the TV programs like Dragon's Den and The Apprentice and things like that, that are kind of, global TV series. And, you know, one of the first things that people ask if you watch Dragon's Den and people go in and they're pitching their idea, do you have the trademark for this? And so many of them say, no, we're just going through the process of patenting it, blah, blah, blah. And now they're announcing it on global TV. We're just going through the process of patent. They haven't even got the patent yet. And now they're sharing their idea. Somebody at home is going to be sat there thinking, gosh, you know, that's so easy. I could have come up with that. Maybe I should.
Exactly.
And then because they go and protect it before you do, you've put like 10 years of your life into doing this, and then someone comes out straight out the gate, they protect it, all of a sudden, you know, they're more established than you, they're more credible than you, they're now more trusted than you. You know, if you're going to go to the length of creating anything, I would just suggest protecting it, because it actually, in the grand scheme of things, from what you expect to make from it, investing in getting it trademarked or learning how to do it yourself is going to be an insignificant cost in comparison to what you're going to lose if it don't go well and somebody else comes out. I mean, or it does go really well and it goes so well someone wants to copy it, and they do. You're not protected.
So in the realm of trademarks and authorship, collaboration is key. How have you seen authors benefit from building strategic partnerships, and what insights, sorry, insights can you share about navigating these collaborations successfully?
Well, I mean, there's different ways of collaborating, certainly as an author. The first is you publish your own book, like we've just published 1 Year No Fear. We reached out to every person we knew in the lead up to the launch of the book to ask if they would be willing to support us by buying and sharing the book. So that is the first collaboration, is reaching out to everybody that you know and not being too proud to reach out to someone and say, look, I've created something that means the world to me. I really believe that this is something that can change whatever it is that you can change. And I'd really appreciate it if you'd be willing to support us. Can we rely on your support in the lead up to the publishing of this book? So that's collaboration 1. These are just off the top of my head. Collaboration 2 is you might have an idea that you want to publish. You might have this great idea for it, but you don't want to do it on your own. Maybe there's some fear. Maybe you prefer to do things collaboratively instead of on your own. Maybe you recognize that actually you've got this great intention and great invention of a process or a product or an idea or a blueprint, or just you've got a story that other people will relate to, and it can change their lives just by reading what you write. But you might not feel like you have enough to write a whole book. And so the other way of collaborating is to bring a group of people together. So, for example, I can show you, I've got some here. So this was our first book, The 7 Reasons Why Customers Don't Choose You and How You Can Change That. This is the one that was written on the boat. We then published through lockdown. We realized there were so many small business owners that were really suffering. Like, most of the people that really got hit were people that were running events like us. We were running up to 34 events every month all around the world when lockdown hit. So that side of the business completely collapsed. And that was around 80% of our business at that time. So we lost 80% of our business overnight. And what we did still have, though, was our global membership. And so I said to our members, look, you've all got really strong businesses in here because of what we've been teaching you to do. You're all working online. and so because they'd all been physical businesses that we'd taught how to create an online stream of income to their business using what they know, which is what I did in that first book. And so I got together 24 of our members from the club at the time, and we wrote The Law of Brand Attraction. And because I've got a couple of friends that were in The Secret, I got them to also write in this book as well, because it was all about the law of attraction. How do you go from being someone that's got a great idea to attracting people to that idea? but I wasn't the only one that had some great knowledge. All of these people were normal, everyday business owners who had gone from having a coaching business or a speaking business or delivering a product or service to creating an online stream of income, publishing their own books and doing things. So that is another example of a collaboration. So we did that, and then there were so many people that wanted to write for that and be part of that, that we went then did another one. And so we had another 27 inspired thought leaders in this one, with Dr. John D. Martini writing the foreword for this book. And so that's another example of collaboration. Obviously, the collaboration that I've just gone through is my husband and I have just written this book together, and we've brought both of our experiences together. So that's another way of collaborating, is to partner with somebody and not just create a book, but create a program that goes with the book as well. And so, I mean, we've got lots of different books. I designed the book cover series for this, but that's another example of a collaboration book, because he was in the global club that I was just talking about there. In fact, most of the people that were on here were in there, and so she created that. So again, that's another example. This was another Amazon bestseller. So, a lot of these things. Another one, Andy Harrington. This is another example of collaboration. So Andy reached out to me and said, I absolutely love your model. I think we're page 80 something. We love you. I love your model that you've created. Can I share it in my book? So I said, yeah, of course you can. So he shared my brand accelerator program model in his book. So maybe you've got something that you want to share, but you're not ready to write your own book. Maybe you want to put something in someone else's book. When you put it in their book, don't you want it to be protected? You want it to be protected before you start sharing it in their book, especially because the model that I shared for that particular program, we did over 3.6 million in sales off the back of that model, which is why he wanted to share it in his book. So you want to protect the content that you're putting out, the assets that you're creating, that you're either sharing in somebody else's book through collaboration, that you're partnering with somebody else to take, maybe a chapter. You write a chapter for someone else's book, just as did in this one, and the Law of Brand Attraction series. The Law of Brand Attraction series, we're just about to launch a global magazine for the Law of Brand Attraction, so there's lots of great things that are coming from that. So it's about protecting what you care about, really. When you care about somebody and you decide you're going to get married, it's not any trouble, is it? You get excited about it. You say, right, okay, how do we plan the wedding? How do we make this commitment? My husband and I just got married a little while ago. And you do the things that you need to do to commit to the idea of this union. And I think it's just as important when you commit to the idea of this union between you and your knowledge, you and your information, and this union that you're going to take out to the world. Don't see it as, oh my God, I've got a trademark and it's a load of trouble. It's not. See it as exciting. It's an exciting process that at the end of it means that you are completely bonded to that idea. And should you die, it will continue beyond you. Should you decide to sell it, it will be worth so much more because you protected it. So I think from a collaborations point of view, I mean, there's loads more ways you can have people that become affiliates of your products and programs, which is what we do. So then you have a series of ambassadors. Now they're going out and sharing your book. What's to stop you from building a whole team of ambassadors that want to go share your book? A friend of mine, Nancy Matthews, she created a whole philosophy called The One. And I've got her book on my bookshelf. And the One philosophy, it's this tiny little book, but she started to deliver one day events teaching people about the One philosophy. She then certified them. This was a whole kind of process that evolved. People started saying to her, I want to go share the One philosophy with my members, with my audience. And so she started to certify people in the One philosophy. Now she's got people that are going out that are all over the world that are sharing the One philosophy, because she protected that brand. She saw that it was worth protecting. She saw it was worth going out there and having it shared, and she could not share it with everybody that she wanted to, with it just being Nancy. She needed another 100 people to be going out and sharing that, another 1,000 people to be going sharing the message. So I mean, it really depends. There's so many different ways that you can collaborate with people, but they're the top ways that we use to collaborate with people and to create multiple assets through what you already know. I mean, we're all sat here with a lifetime filled with knowledge and trauma and experiences and fears and failures and F-ups and all kinds of stuff that people want to know, because by doing that and by writing about it, you're collapsing the gap of the amount of time it will take them. I know it's taken me like 24 years to get to where I am using what I know. I've paid dearly, and I've paid a high price with my health quite often for the lessons that I've learned. I don't want anybody else to learn that. And the book that we've just written, 1 Year No Fear, really was written for one of our students who attended one of our days. We used to run events in well, all over the world, but this event was in Calgary in Canada back in 2016. And we weren't able to help this participant in the way he needed help, because we had the Brand Accelerator program, the big program that I just shared that's in Andy's book. And that's all we were selling, you know, and we'd learned from masters that you sell a high price program. You don't get involved in all the little things, you know, you sell the big thing. What's the point of selling little things? Sell big things. It takes as much energy to sell a big thing as it does a little thing. And I'd bought into that concept. And so we ran this 1-day event, and Sean, whose name is protected, it wasn't Sean, but we've protected his name, so we're going to call him Sean for now. So Sean attended the event, and he had the most amazing day, and he came away with all the knowledge he needed to go out and build that brand. But there were steps missing that you had to, at that time, you had to buy the program to get the steps. And he said, I really want to buy the program, but I can't afford to do it. Somebody paid for my ticket to come here today. I can't afford to do it. Can you just get me started? Have you got something smaller that can get me started so that I can afford to buy your program? And I said, let me think about it. You know, I'll come back in a few months. I'll think about it, and I'll have something for you by then. Well, I didn't realize how fragile his mental health was at that time, and how lonely and desperate he was at that time. And not long after that, I received a call from one of our members saying that he'd taken his own life. And at that point, I just thought, I could have helped him. Sammy, what are you doing? You could have helped him. And I don't know. From that moment on, I just realized, if you can help somebody, even if you write that book for one person and you help that one person to change their life in some way, then it's your duty to write that book. And if you're going to help that one person with that book, then it's your duty to protect it, so that when that one person reads it and it changes their life and they go tell everybody else about that book, you're protected. And you're not only protected, you're branded. So I think it's important that no matter what you do or what you write, that you realize that there is a life cycle on the end of that book. The publishing of the book, that's just the first step. That's when you've given birth to it. Just like a child, you've now got to feed it, water it, look after it, make sure that you're proud of it and that you continue to be proud of it. And you go out into the world and you get that book out everywhere. And the more people that see it, the less control you have over where it goes. So if you take control of your label now, you won't be leaving money on the table later.
Yeah, that's so true. So I am known as the Empress of Trademarks, and I'm navigating the trademark cosmos. And I'm curious about your take, Sammy. How do you see the future landscape unfolding for authors concerning intellectual property rights? Are there any author trends or changes on the horizon that creators should be mindful of, do you think?
I think we should definitely be mindful of AI and how easy it is to just create a book using AI now, which in one sense is great, I suppose, for people that, you know, have a very real fear of writing because of dyslexia, or you know, other I don't want to call them disabilities, because people call them disabilities and I think that's a label, but you know, people do see themselves sometimes. Yeah, neurodiversity I think is a great way to talk about it. And so I think AI has been really helpful for people that are neurodiverse, that are fearful of writing something or it being spelled wrong or saying the wrong thing. And I have lots of members that say that, I'd love to publish a book, but I don't want to because, and it's usually because of dyslexia, or somebody has told them, is fear, it's somebody has told them throughout their childhood that they weren't good enough. Like, well, who are you to write this book? And there's all these tiny little things that stop you from writing it. I think AI has transformed the way that people with neurodiverse challenges can get their content out. But the challenge is, I think, for authors who are genuinely writing and taking freaking 11 months to write it and really, pouring your heart and soul into your work, for AI now to come along, and there's you who's climbed the mountain, who's about to share what the journey was of climbing that mountain. And then somebody comes along who's never climbed the mountain, who looks like they've climbed the mountain, and their book can look better than yours, more established than yours, and they could be out there, talking about it. Well, they've already made that progress, haven't they? And even if people find out that it was a load of rubbish, it's too late. They've already overtaken you. So I think we have a duty now to recognize that there are people in the world who are not genuine, and I'm not saying that everybody that uses AI is not genuine. I'm not saying that at all. We all use AI in lots of different ways that we're even not aware of that we use it. So we're all using AI in some way or another, unless you're hidden under a rock and you're not using technology at all. And there are people that do that, and sometimes I'm very envious of them. But I think we have to be mindful of that, the fact that there's two ways to look at it. So I had one member a few weeks ago who has a neurodiverse challenge, who said, I'm really fearful of putting my stuff out there because I am dyslexic, and I'm worried that, that I'm going to put something out there that isn't right. And she was brought up in a very perfectionist household as well. So standards were very high. So she holds herself to ridiculously high standards. And so she was worried about putting this out. And I said, well, why don't you, I can't remember, it wasn't her whole content, but there was something about it. I said, why don't you just copy and paste it into AI and see what it comes back with? So it's actually her original copy. She hasn't just asked it to come up with it. It's her copy, but it's rephrased or spelled correctly for her. And she said, I won't put any of my stuff up into AI because everyone else will get hold of it. And so the way I think of it from that point of view is, well, it's your original content. And let's face it, you're about to publish a book, so you're putting it out publicly anyway. What does it matter if you put it out publicly or you put it on AI? At least you've got it out faster, because somebody will come up with it in AI and they'll get it out there and they'll look more established than you. They'll look more knowledgeable than you until they start actually selling it. And then they haven't got the experience you have, but the damage is already done. They've already got your clients by that point. So I think using AI for things like that is really helpful. And I personally use it for things like that. It's my own content, but I'll put it in and say, is there a better way to say this? Because sometimes I get a bit stuck. And so I don't know, I feel like it helps me. But at the same time, you've got the very real threat of other people going and using the technology. I see it all over Facebook ads. How to use ChatGPT to write your book, to create all your social media. I think we're in danger of losing sight of real, genuine knowledge. And so if you are a genuine, wise knowledge birther, a wisdom warrior, if you have that inside you, I think it's going to actually become a unique selling point that this is an original book, not written by AI.
Yeah.
And put it out
That's
there.
also something I've said about my own book, because I'm somebody experiencing life with dyslexia. And back then when I wrote it in 2019, AI wasn't as much around as it is today. I mean, it was obviously there because of spell check and all of that. However, it wasn't, Chat GPT and that back then. So when I've spoken about my own book, I have it right here. And it's not on the market anymore because I'm going to update it. However, it is written by me, and I am very, very fortunate because my favorite professor from University of Copenhagen helped me edit the legal stuff in it. So that's really important, and it's also a validation of me. Plus, he wrote the foreword.
Yeah.
You know,
Now,
and
I mean, again, when you talk
he's
about
agreed
that
to do the
and get,
same for my new for the updated
yeah,
version of it.
that's also a way of collaboration. You've just
Yeah,
demonstrated perfectly collaboration.
yeah.
Because, you know, I also believe that even when you're writing it, you can't see the label from outside of the jar, or from inside the jar. You can't see the label. Other people can see it, you can't. So as you're writing your book, that's another kind of layer of protection. If you've already protected the name of it as you're writing it, and many people won't think about doing that beforehand. I know I certainly didn't. But if you think about, okay, so I've got a great name for this book, I'm going to protect it. When you start showing it to people that are proofreading it for you, that are writing forwards and things for you, again, you're handing over complete control. If you haven't signed a non-disclosure agreement with them or anything like that, who's to say they're not going to go and like read the book because you want them to promote it? They go read the book, and then they go take the book and share it themselves before you've even protected yourself. I think, you know, I mean, only you can really answer that question, Celeste, for everybody here. When is the best time to protect it? Is it when you've had the idea? Is it when you've actually written the book? Is it when you start promoting the book? When's the best time?
So I would say always have a copyright clause in your written content, even your emails on your website. Always, always, always a copyright clause, because
Yeah,
that is the first step. Yes, copyright is something that is protected automatically. The minute you write something that is your original content, you own the copyright to it. However, if you don't have a copyright clause, who's to know that you were the author of it?
yeah,
You know, so it's about having the tiny, tiny little steps towards the big step that is like a trademark. And the minute I had my own trademark, I obviously put it on every single page in my book,
yeah,
because it makes sense to me, because I'm the intellectual property specialist. So why wouldn't I do it?
yeah,
You know, so that's of course what I did, you know, because it's another layer of protection. It's another way of saying, this is actually mine. This is my content.
yeah,
I wrote this. It's original.
yeah.
This is me.
Isn't it
That's
interesting, Celeste, how people, you know, it's like when you go on holiday, there's always this funny thing about people get really protective over their sunbed. You know, or they get protective over their chair. You go to an event and people, like, it's a 3-day event and people sit in that same chair for 3 days. Even if the event person says move around and meet someone else, they're like so locked into that chair, or they're locked into their usual parking space, or like they're really protective over these physical things, and yet they'll, you know, publish a book and not protect that.
yeah.
You know,
It makes no sense.
no. And you know, that parking space is just, you know, maybe going to be used by whoever, whereas that book could be used by millions of people.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just don't know where it's going to go. And if you think about it, like when you're watching these major like movie stars that have published books, let's take The Secret, for example. Look how The Secret just went wild. I mean, it's been a phenomenon in the personal development industry. If you're in personal development and you haven't heard of The Secret, it's like, what rock have you been under? You know, everybody in the personal development area has heard of The Secret, mostly, I would imagine. And so imagine if she hadn't, Rhonda Byrne, imagine if she hadn't have protected that.
Yeah.
Yeah, how wild that was. And yet she wrote that book not to become a phenomenon. She wrote it to help some people, and now millions of people all over the world have a copy of The Secret in their archive or in their bookshelf, and
Yeah.
most of them watched the movie The Secret and all of the little follow-ons from The Secret. You know, I really appreciated the kind of protection and trademarking area of brand when I went to the M&M's World store in London. And when you walk into that store, that's when you see how a brand who has protected itself has been able to then just diversify that brand into hundreds of different products which again is the power of protection, isn't it? Once you've protected that idea, it's really powerful for you to talk to somebody like yourself, or to learn from someone like yourself, to say, okay, so I'm going to publish a book. I keep showing everyone else's books. I really should show one of mine. I'm going to go pick my new book up in a minute. Everybody else is receiving it from Amazon. I haven't even picked it in my hands yet. I haven't had a copy yet. But let's take the law of brand attraction, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that you publish that book, and then someone says to you, oh, are you running any programs around that? And you say, yeah, actually, well, I could do. And so then you run a program around it, and then someone says, oh, I love the concepts in that. Are you doing anything else? Oh yeah, well, let's publish a magazine. Oh, you doing anything else? Yeah, let's run a summit. Are you doing anything else? Let's run a retreat. Think of the amount of assets that come from that one idea.
Yeah.
Now, if
Just
you
merchandise.
and merch as well. And if you don't think, where is my brand going to land in 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Then you're just going to be sat there thinking this is just a book, and you'll probably go protect it as just a book. But if you talk to somebody like Celeste, she'll get you to think bigger than that. Well, hang on a minute. When you start going into the other categories, do you think that this might be merchandise? Do you think that you might be selling a course or a program? Do you think you might be doing these other things with it? In which case, you will want to protect yourself in other categories. And if you don't know that information, then you're thinking you're protecting yourself, and you are still totally wide open and exposed. And you do not want to be one of those people that says, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Learn it
So many people are like, oh, but I just need one category. No, you don't.
No.
Because it's seldom enough. I mean, think about like Harry Potter. Think about how Joanne Rowling, or J.K. Rowling, she started writing the books, and then it became films, and then it became merchant. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
It's an empire.
Yes. It is an empire.
Billion-dollar empire.
Yeah. And so people might not want to be that big. And I get that. And that's okay, because that's a fear too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a fear when people say, oh, but I'm not, because I've spoken to so many people about the Apple logo, because that is one of the best. It is so instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
Plus it's an empire, and it's worth billions of dollars. And people are like, oh, but I don't want to be that big. And I get that. And now that I know you, I will be able to approach it in a completely different way, because I will say, well, okay, so maybe you want to address those fears, because what are you afraid of? What's the worst that can happen? You get famous and people recognize you and come up to you on the street and thank you for what for the change you've provided them with. Is that really so much to be afraid of? Or would it be that because of this book or this thing that you've created, they come and thank you? Like, imagine that you discovered a cure for something and people came and thanked you on the street. That wouldn't be so bad, would it?
And it's not even those things that happen either. It's the little tiny things, I mean, we published our book 3 days ago at the point of talking to you now, and I've had messages from complete strangers who have started to read the book and have got hooked on the book and have started, they're halfway through the book already in just a few days. And I mean, this is like nearly 300 pages, this book, that it's, and we've created a lot of resources that are online as well that go with it. All of them have the copyright protection text on them. So it's just little things like that it's just making sure that every touch point, every heartbeat of your experience with somebody feels professional, because it is protected. And I think there is a layer of professionalism that there is the kind of, there's the you, and then there's the protected you. There's the protected you looks like you're more savvy, more professional, like you know what you're doing. And in many times, we just go for it. And I built 5 businesses not realizing what I was doing. It was just like, oh, this is so much fun. Like, I'm helping people, I'm making a difference. Like, how else can we help them? Going out there and doing that. what if your book becomes like that? You know, I think oftentimes we start off with the intention that, you know, maybe we'll help a few people with this. If it just helps a few people, and we tell ourselves, if it just helps a few people, and usually there's a limiting belief there that stops you from saying, if this helps millions of people. It's like, if this helps a few people, then I'll be happy. Like, you've set your bar at that level, and I guess for some people that's going to be true, but for most people, is it really true? If I help just one person, this will make a difference. In your heart, you're probably craving that you're going to help way more than that. And, you know, maybe a fear of success, one of the fears we talk about in the book, one of the, you know, if you have a fear of success, that's going to be massively underpinned by a whole bunch of other fears that are, you know, the little brothers and sisters that are boosting the ego of this fear of success. Quite often behind a fear of success is a fear of burnout. And people fear burning out, and yet they're burning out working so much harder to try and get known and get recognized, because they're not protected, because they're not taken seriously, because they're not acting like, you know what, this is protected now, I need to get this out there. I think there's a different way that you behave when you go through a process like this as well.
And
It's
you can
like,
also
you
ask
want to tell everyone.
yourself, you can ask yourself, these big players that are out there, why is it that they are so fierce about protecting what they've created? Is it because they want to leave that legacy behind that you spoke about earlier? Or is it because they're just greedy? I
It
think
kind of doesn't matter, does it? Because now they've at least got a choice.
yeah.
If you don't have the choice, then the choice is taken away from you.
Yeah,
But if you
exactly.
create the choice at the beginning, then you've got control of the choices that you make.
Yeah. Yeah. And so people may see you as greedy, and that's because they don't know what's actually happening. And you know, I've heard of so many people who have experienced the devastating situation of not having done their due diligence, and then they or taken, you know, protection for their intellectual property, and so they invite in an investor, and boom, hostile takeover, and they're left with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can go south very quickly.
Yeah.
But, you know, a friend of mine, she said to me, actually, the doctor at the hospital also said this to me. So when she said it to me, it had double the impact. You're free to make your own choices, but you're not free of the consequences of those choices.
Yeah.
So you're free to make your own choice not to protect yourself. Of course you are. You're totally free. You do what you like, but you're not free of the consequences of making that choice. And I've got a mantra now that I heard years ago, that I don't know who I heard this from, but they said, you know what, I'd rather regret something that I did than something I didn't do. And so I have that mantra throughout everything that I do now. I'd rather really regret trademarking something, and which I never would, I can't imagine, but I'd rather the ability to regret it than to have somebody come and, you know, stamp all over my brand, or go and steal things, you know, pass them off as their own, and then not having the opportunity to defend that, because now the choice is taken away from me and the consequence is in front of me. So yeah, don't regret it. Go, just take action on it. And I think your masterclass is a brilliant way of doing it, you know, to learn how to do it yourself, because now again you have a choice. Do I do this myself, or do I engage Celeste to do this for me and just take it all off my hands and make sure that it's done right? You know, you're giving people the choice, and at least they have the choice. And there's going to be many people that remove their choice by saying no. They're actually making a choice, and they'll remove their choice, and they'll remove the ability to protect themselves, which will be very sad if they do that and then something goes wrong later down the line.
And
You can't
it's
take it
also,
back.
people often, when they've done the trademark registration themselves, then they come to me and say, I don't understand why this was rejected. And I'm like, well, I know. I'm not going to tell them why it was rejected. I know why it was rejected.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell them why, because that is why I do what I do.
Well, that's why that's what they're paying you for.
Exactly.
you can tell them what to look out for, and you can help them to understand the process and what to do and what minefield they might be entering into. But if they want to do it properly, then they just need to come to you. So have you seen that there's a picture going around on Facebook, and there's like this guy who's tattooed this unicorn on someone's back, and there's a picture of the actual unicorn, and then there's the picture of what he's done on that person's back, and it's like, yeah, if you'd have paid to do it properly, you could have had an expert do that and make it look how you wanted it to look. And I think it's the same when you cut corners, you go around in circles, and it's so true. It's so true.
This has been such a delight to talk to you about. I mean, I'm so honored that you agreed to say yes to my request to interview you. I've never done this before in my entire life. I could have been held back by a fear, and thanks to you, I wasn't, because I'm part of your program. So I just decided to dive into it and try and figure out how to navigate this, because it's
And how amazing it is. How amazing it is. And it's going to help a lot more than one person. And for those of you that are out there watching this right now, learning something that you didn't know before, or feeling like, you know, I am actually creating some things. I'm creating programs. You might not even be creating a book. It might be a program, but a book is a product. So any product that you create needs to be protected.
Yeah.
Well, now you're sat in front of the person that can help you.
And not just products, services as well, you know, because people have created, like, you have this process that you take people through. Put your trademark onto it so that it's protected, so that people can't just swipe it the way they did with your first book, you know, and claim it to be their own. That's what we don't want.
Well, they now know how to find it, and
Yeah.
they now know who to get it from.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this conversation. It was absolutely delightful. And I just love you. And you know that, you know, I love you from the moon to the moon and back, from the moon and back to the moon and back. And I'm so appreciative to have come across you, because there were certain things that I didn't know of, and there were fears that came up for me. And as I say, I wouldn't have done this interview if I hadn't been in your vicinity the way I am. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. And may this be the first of many.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
I know there'll be more.